So who are those very interested people? There are about 1%, they say there's about 1% of the consumers who are extremely interested in what's going on. And they extremely want to have that role in changing the society, making the society a better place, or making the product a better one for themselves. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons people do it. But usually what connects them is that they are highly connected, so they have a central role in the system. They also interact a lot. And what's very important is that they at the same time are very willing to share. You wouldn't imagine the competitiveness and at the same time the sharing that goes on in these networks, some of them at least. Developing new algorithms for programming, for example, which is a highly competitive field, but at the same time hugely collaborative. And that because collaboration is pressing on the top needs, and I'm very sorry I come back to the Maslow pyramid, on the very, very top needs over there. It gives you feedback, it gives you that pat on the shoulder, good guy, you did it, right? So a coin, essentially a coin is a collaborative innovation network. A coin consists of these people up here. That's at least what they say. And the beauty of it all is that whenever customers are involved, whenever there's this kind of a network, and the innovation funnel is inside the market as such, so they do assess the ideas. They provide input first, they do assess it, they test it, and they develop it, and they also consume it, which means that any answer that emerges from the system is bound to be the correct one. You know, and it's also a good business opportunity at the same time, because if it's the correct answer, then the customers will buy it, right? Because they decided it. So you do get the stuff that you like, don't you? But at the same time, of course, which means that the company can only have so much. The company can only have a small role in the system. You cannot influence it too much, because otherwise you would be hijacking it, which is one of the biggest problems that these kinds of networks usually have, is that small groups of people try to hijack it. So you can't really do it, because people will just leave and maybe have another network somewhere else. Sorry. And when I come to one point, and this has been a very clustered speech, not a very good one at that, but I do hope that the presentation will help you along a little better. But when I come to one point that I want people to remember from this presentation, it's that these communities are essentially there anyway, because that's where we have reached right now. The wants and needs of people have gone so far that the current business systems, current formations of organizations, organizational schemes cannot satisfy it anymore. So these things emerge anyway, and they will keep on emerging, well, at least for the time that we have enough resources to have such a consumption society in the first place. But let's take that as an a priori assumption right now. When these communities emerge, then there's not really a way to fight them. And there's not much way to take vicious advantage of them either. You can only be a part of it, and you can only collaborate just as they do, because otherwise people will just run away from you. So it's not a question of what you can get from a network, it's more of a question of what you can give. So it needs a very different mindset. It needs a very different mindset inside a company, organization, whatever, who is trying to take, let's say, advantage of this whole system. So it's more about giving, really, and getting somewhere together with the people. We have a few examples that you have in the slides and also on the next one of companies that have been able to do that, to do stuff together, and we see that they are highly successful at that as well. I'd like to end here, so we have some time for discussion, questions. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Madis. Of course. Well, if nobody has a question, I could start myself.
Sure.
I come from also a microeconomic perspective, but not from customer-driven innovation, but from company perspective. And the ideas you presented, of course, they would say look very nice in screen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
However, the question is if you live in a real business world and look from company perspective, because innovations mostly still come from companies in terms of new products. It is actually rather difficult, as you also admitted yourself, to kind of encompass those ideas into the business models, because there is something which is called past dependencies, that once you have a business model, it needs a radical change or radical changes in environment to change it. And now my question to you is that do you know also some companies in Estonia, for instance? I mean, those examples are well known all around the world, but in Estonia, who have been able to kind of address or take on board some of those ideas and try to so to say build a competitive advantage for themselves.
Yeah. I do know one, actually. It's our own company. The bad part about it, I don't want to make an ad out of this, but we do this a little, yeah. In the same archery business. Essentially, what this means for us usually is that we have the tools to make anything the customer wants. Now this doesn't only mean a selection, a customization option that you have, like you can have 16 different types of doors on a kitchen cupboard. It's not that type of a customization. It's the customization that you can have literally any shape, any size, any color, any product, anything you really want. We sometimes do that, but it's really a question of adaptation. And it's a question of whether you want to customize as far, because costs go up. At the same time, you can only do one, really, because a particular person is asking that from you. But it's actually a good model, because it produces a lot of confidence and trust in you. And since you have these collaboration networks outside, somewhere on the web, for example, people discuss this stuff, you actually become rather famous through that, through providing customers with exactly what they need. That means you make a new model for one particular customer. It's so different from everything else, and you're not going to sell another one of them, but you just make it from one person, which is possible, and it gives you a lot of credit in the market, I think.
I believe there is always a trade-off in that sense. The famous quote by Henry Ford when he was asked can we choose a different color of your car, and he replied, yes, you can choose any color of the car as long as it's black.
Yep.
So obviously the ultimate customization is a good thing, but in real business terms you have to come down to certain optimizations. So please.
Yes.
I think you have very good points and very nice view of things. I mean, companies have asked their clients' feedback forever and try to improve their products, whether it's service or products. And this is just a new way. So it's kind of doing it itself on the web, on the society. So you don't need to have these papers where they mark whether they like the service or not. Now it's happening on its own. And whether the company takes advantage of it, it's their business. Whether they listen to the customers or not. Yeah. I think it's really brilliant.
I mean, the opportunities are out there anyway, because as I said, people are discussing these things anyway. You can't really stop it. So you can only take part if you want to. It's an option.
If you